Incredible revelation, single mom discovers a billionaire's surprising support behind her rent. Sarah flipped through the stack of medical charts in her hands, her mind racing faster than her feet could move in the bustling hospital corridor. Each page contained the stories of patients depending on her, yet all she could think about was her kid 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Leo awaiting her return in their small 2-bedroom apartment. The eviction notice slipped under their door earlier that week gnawed at her like an insatiable wolf. If they lost their home, what would become of her children? This job, long hours, and the constant stress seemed to lead only to this looming disaster. The shadows of doubt crowded her thoughts. Had she worked hard enough? Was it truly noble to struggle to provide for them alone? She wrestled with guilt, recalling her father's words, the hard-working mechanic who lived with integrity. "You put in the effort, sweetheart, you earn your keep," he'd often remind her. But the rent was due, again bills, food, education, it all tangled inside her mind, pulling her down. The pressure mounted. Anxiety clawed at her ribs, constricting not just her breath, but hope itself. As she drove home, headlights reflecting off her rearview mirror, she didn't notice the gentle rain beginning to fall. After parking, she shyly approached their apartment, heart hammering with exhaustion wrapped in despair. And then it happened. There it was, a new eviction notice lurking beneath her door like a silent thief. Goosebumps flooded her arms as panic gripped her. She imagined Emma and Leo terrified, their laughter replaced by confusion and insecurity, their little world shattered. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Drowning in her swirling sea of uncertainty, Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly, but she couldn't bear to look. Each vibration felt like an accusation, her friends reaching out, trying to offer help that sounded futile in her weary mind. She felt trapped amid the weight of expectations and pride. Accepting help? What did that make her? A failure? But not accepting it could mean losing everything. Caught in this internal tug-of-war, she dwelled on the unthinkable. Maybe it was time to accept defeat. Accept that the world had dealt her this hand, a frail position under the spotlight of judgment. Her heart pounded as her resolve wavered. Would she dare admit she needed support, and worse, would it eat away at her sense of who she was as a mother? Just then, a figure appeared in her mind. The billionaire whom the whispers spoke about, David, a man of mystery with an enigmatic past. What would he see if he found out how precarious her reality was? Would he deem her weak? As the thoughts coiled into an unrelenting spiral of dread, a single spiraling question emerged. What if, in searching for a way to provide, she found herself losing her sense of self? Sarah trembled at these thoughts, the boundary between survival and surrender blurred. And just as her mind settled into despair, the phone buzzed again. Another contact, another uncertainty. Desperation gnawed at her as something deep within her screamed to fight, to find a way out. The future was uncharted, but she feared the knock on the door could bring more than just unanswered questions. As Sarah stood frozen, a storm brewed inside her, both exhilarating and daunting. The answer could change everything. The following morning, the sun streamed weakly through the thin curtains of Sarah's apartment, illuminating a living space that felt both familiar and suffocating. She rubbed her eyes as if trying to erase the memory of last night's anxiety, but reality refused to let her off the hook. The eviction notice still lay crumpled on the coffee table, a stark reminder of the stakes she faced. Determined to push through the fog of despair, Sarah hustled around the apartment preparing breakfast, but her thoughts flickered back to David, the billionaire. What did he know about struggle? She pictured him, cloaked in luxury and privilege, while she was drowning in bills and worry. A part of her resented him, but another, more curious part, wondered if he held keys to doors she hadn't even realized existed. On the drive to the hospital, each stoplight felt eternal. Racing thoughts clouded her mind. What if she could connect with David? Was reaching out for help from someone like him an admission of failure? No, she reminded herself. This wasn't about weakness, it was about survival and ensuring her children had the life they deserved. Each moment of hesitation chipped away at her resolve. The world outside became a blur of color, but her focus narrowed to a plan. During her shift, she navigated through nursing duties with an almost robotic precision. 5 patients to discharge, 2 minor surgeries to prep. These tasks provided a temporary reprieve from her swirling thoughts. But all too soon, the stillness was shattered by frenetic moments where she felt exposed, vulnerable. Just a glance at an empty examination room spurred visions of the eviction notice, making her stomach churn. At lunch, she sat alone, too distracted to engage in small talk with her colleagues. The cafeteria hummed with routine chaos as she ate mechanically, pushing the food around her plate. Finally, she steeled herself and opened her phone, scrolling to David's contact information, the one number she had saved from a chance encounter. Her heart raced as the digits stared back at her like fireflies in the dark. In a moment of impulsiveness, she typed out a text, "Hi David, it's Sarah, from the other night. I hope you're well. I could use your insight regarding some personal challenges I'm facing." She hesitated before hitting send, thoughts spiraling. What if he dismissed her? What if he judged her for reaching out? But deep down, Sarah recognized that this was a pivotal moment, a choice between continuing to struggle alone and opening a potential door to something greater. The clock ticked on, each second stretching painfully as she awaited a response. Her overworked mind analyzed every possibility, even the improbable notion that he could help her financially. But would he want to? Would her pride allow it? Minutes turned to hours, and as shadows crept across the room, the phone buzzed. Her heart leapt, fists tightening in anticipation when she saw his name flash across the screen. "Hey, Sarah. I got your message. Let's meet tomorrow afternoon. I'd love to help." A rush of relief flooded through her, but with it came renewed apprehension. What would this encounter reveal about herself? Could she navigate this new, uncertain terrain without losing her bearings? Embracing this moment was both liberating and terrifying. As she turned these possibilities over in her mind, she felt the stirring of something long buried within her determination. A sense of agency began to form like a cocoon around her insecurities. Tomorrow held the potential for transformation, not just for her current situation but for her identity. It was time to forge a path where survival did not mean surrender, and emerging from this meeting could redefine her future. Yet, beneath the anticipation, an unsettling anxiety lingered. Would she truly be ready to confront whatever the outcome could mean for her and her children? With these thoughts racing through her mind, Sarah prepared to face the day ahead, doubt still nipping at her heels but driven by a glimmer of hope that perhaps she was on the verge of something extraordinary. How far was she willing to go to change her life? The next morning, Sarah woke with a sense of urgency kicking deep within her. The apartment felt different, charged with the promise of possibility. She took a moment to examine herself in the grimy bathroom mirror. Dark circles underlined her eyes, but she also saw something else, a slim thread of resolve stitching together her frayed edges. Today could mark a turning point, and she couldn't allow hesitation to unfold quietly. As she prepared for the day, her breakfast routine felt more like a prelude to a performance than a mundane task. The kettle whistled frantically, emphasizing her quickened heart rate. Each movement became deliberate, systematic. She had a mission. It was time to step into the unknown, to reach out beyond the familiar walls of her struggles. Arriving at the hospital, the air buzzed with the usual routine, but Sarah felt like an outsider in a hazy dream. Her colleagues buzzed around her, engaged in conversations and laughter that felt miles away. But she was focused. The monotonous rhythm of her nursing duties seemed to fade into white noise as anticipation built within her. She was energized, ready to present her best self at the meeting. The hours passed agonizingly slow. Sarah worked effectively, her mind darting only to the upcoming encounter as she anticipated the questions she might face. What would David want to know? What exactly could she convey about her situation? Preparation sparked a different anxiety, one that reminded her of the stakes involved. This could be the moment that changed everything, a lifeline she dared to grasp. Finally, the clock struck 1, and she glanced at her watch. With the seconds crawling, she found herself pacing through the nurse's station, trying to channel her nervous energy. Part of her wanted to bolt to the meeting, seize the opportunity, while another side questioned her boldness. What if she didn't measure up? What if she bored him with her struggles like an impatient child? Gathering herself, she clutched her lunch bag in one hand, a thin shield of consolation against the torrent of doubt. Just before leaving, she received a message. A quick glance at her phone revealed a map link to the cafe where they agreed to meet. She took a deep breath, willing herself to walk confidently into the unknown as she navigated her route. Upon arriving, Sarah noticed the cafe's quaint charm, a stark contrast to her chaotic life. In a corner booth, David sat, a striking figure exuding calmness and power. He looked up as she approached, and she felt an unexpected rush of clarity. This was it, this was her chance. David, she greeted him, forcing a smile that masked her nerves. Sarah, glad you could make it, he responded warmly, gesturing for her to sit. The sincerity in his voice melted some of her trepidation. As they settled into conversation, nervous laughter danced between them. She began to talk about her situation, piecing together her story in a way she had rehearsed countless times in her mind. But as her words flowed, another facet of her emerged, a confident and capable woman ready to face her demons. With each revelation she shared about her struggles, a sense of liberation enveloped her. David listened attentively, his brow furrowing at the challenges she articulated. It shocked Sarah to see him completely engaged, offering insight and suggestions without condescension. Each time he interjected with thoughtful questions, she felt the powerful realization that her story wasn't just an appeal for help, it was a testament to her resilience. Halfway through the meeting, he paused, his expression suddenly serious. Your determination is palpable, David said, leaning in slightly. But you have skills and talents you haven't even considered tapping into yet. Have you thought about how you could leverage those? The question hit her unexpectedly. She had been so focused on survival that she hadn't imagined beyond her current limitations. What was she capable of? This thought began to echo in her mind, gradually unraveling her tightly wound fears. What if, indeed? As the conversation took a deeper turn, Sarah confronted the truth about her own abilities and potential. But with every realization, a pit formed in her stomach. What would she do now that she was beginning to recognize her own worth? Would she be brave enough to pursue what could ultimately lead to a more fulfilling life? With determination blooming inside her, this meeting had already begun to redefine her. Sarah felt the stakes changing, and with it, the exhilarating pulse of opportunity. She knew this was only the beginning, yet lurking beneath that excitement was fear of doing too little or perhaps doing too much too soon. As they closed the conversation, David leaned back, and the uncharted territory of her future loomed ahead like a vast, unfilled canvas. Let us see how we can work together, Sarah. You might just be surprised by what you can achieve. The spark of possibility ignited a million questions within her as they exchanged goodbyes. Just as she turned to leave, the full impact of the invitation to explore her potential began to sink in, both thrilling and terrifying. How far would she go down this path of self-discovery? As she stepped away from the cafe, a chilling realization gripped her. Change would demand more than she ever expected. Embracing the unknown could come at a cost, one she was now ready to confront. The following days felt transformed for Sarah, each sunrise whispering promises masked in uncertainty. Even the routine sounds of her apartment seemed different, resonating with a newfound energy. She spent the mornings meticulously planning her days around her nursing shifts while mentally reviewing the conversation with David. At the hospital, she approached her work with a vigor previously absent. The mundane became a canvas for her blossoming confidence. Informal chats with colleagues morphed from perfunctory exchanges into opportunities to implement the assertiveness she discovered in that cafe. She even volunteered to lead a team for a project that aimed to improve patient care procedures. Subtle sparks of leadership ignited within her, and for the first time, she wasn't simply performing duties, she was creating an impact. Yet, the echoes of David's words haunted her mind: "You have skills and talents you haven't even considered tapping into." There, buried beneath the layers of self-doubt, lay a volcanic force waiting to erupt. That afternoon, while reviewing patient case notes, Sarah found herself pausing, the ink on the page blurring as she drifted into thought. What were her skills, really? Beyond the daily routines of nursing, what made her unique? It was a welled-up frustration at her own unacknowledged potential that brought her pen to a blank page. She began to jot down her talents, her empathy, her ability to communicate, the joy she found in teaching others. Yet, she hadn't fully embraced these attributes; they remained dormant, waiting to be harnessed. The following Saturday, Sarah enrolled in an online course about leadership in healthcare delivery. It was a modest step into unfamiliar territory, but she felt exhilarated. Within moments of registration, a pulse of anxiety surged through her. What if she wasn't smart enough? What if the material was too advanced? But the sheer act of taking action held power. Deciding to challenge her internal critic, she immersed herself in the course materials. As the weeks slipped by, practical concepts merged with her experiences on the floor, creating a vibrant tapestry of understanding. She learned to conduct team meetings, delegate responsibilities, and collect feedback. Each segment of the course was a stone carving itself into the statue of her newfound identity. Throughout the journey, she faced moments of self-doubt. One day, while preparing for her final project, she stumbled across a particularly complex case study. Fear gnawed at her as she skated on the thin ice of her self-esteem. Should she rise to meet the challenge or remain anchored in familiar safety? The choice lay heavy yet thrilling before her. She began crafting her presentation, each slide demanding more from her than she anticipated. She called upon the techniques she had learned with David. When the presentation day arrived, her initial nerves began to dissipate, replaced by a magnetic drive. As she delivered her findings to a small group of colleagues, she realized she wasn't just performing duties, she was crafting a narrative replete with her insights and unique solutions. Each question posed by her audience only added fuel to her fire. Sarah could feel the connection forming, her ideas resonating with those around her. The feedback was gratifying. Her colleagues lauded her approach, and even her department manager took interest. But still, a shadow lurked in the background. There remained a part of her questioning whether this newfound assertiveness was truly sustainable. Was she placing her steps on fragile ground? Would she be able to maintain this momentum as challenges inevitably arose? As the excitement faded, the ravine of uncertainty loomed wider. She had tasted personal growth but was aware of how easy it could slip away. What awaited her when she stepped outside the comfort of her newly carved identity? Later that week, David reached out again, proposing they meet for coffee. The pulse of anticipation quickened in her chest. This was the perfect chance to discuss her progress, share her burgeoning confidence, and, perhaps, gain insight on how far she could possibly go. As Sarah prepared for the meeting, she confronted an unsettling truth: was she truly ready to embrace the vastness of her own potential, or would fear lead her back into the shadows? The stakes felt higher than ever, each heartbeat echoing a decision yet to be made. As she slipped into her shoes, an urgent question lingered: was she prepared to accept help, not just from David but from her inner strength as well? With every confident step toward the cafe, navigating her own duality of fear and determination, Sarah clutched her bag tightly, feeling the weight of her past slip away. The door swung open, revealing David's encouraging smile, but behind it lay a riddle about her next leap. What did she truly want from this journey, support or sovereignty? As Sarah settled into her chair across from David, she tried to quell the nervous energy coursing through her veins. The cafe buzzed with life, yet her focus narrowed to the man before her, whose presence now felt both reassuring and intimidating. She could see the curiosity in his eyes, probing for revelations she had barely begun to articulate. "Hey, Sarah," he said, offering a warm smile. "How's everything going?" Her initial instinct was to spill every detail, to share the exhilaration of learning and the shadow of doubt that occasionally dulled her newfound flame. But instead, she paused, weighing the delicate balance of expressing vulnerability while also projecting strength. "It's going well. I've been working on some leadership skills, and it feels good, really good." David nodded, his interest deepening. "That's great to hear. What have you learned that stands out for you?" In that moment, Sarah felt a shift. No longer were his words merely prompts for conversation, they were scaffolds for her self-discovery. "I've realized that I can really engage my team. I've been leading meetings, and instead of just talking at them, I'm genuinely seeking their input. It feels like we're all part of something bigger." "Excellent," he replied, eyes sparkling with encouragement. "That's what leaders do, they create an atmosphere for collaboration. But let me ask you this, what's your biggest fear right now?" This question hung in the air, weighty and palpable. Sarah had anticipated it but felt unprepared for the honesty it demanded. "I guess that I'll revert to my old self, back to being unsure, unseen," she confessed, vulnerability creeping in. "What if all this is just a phase?" David leaned in slightly, his tone remaining gentle yet firm. "Every step you take in building your confidence is like lifting weights. You may have days where you question your progress, but that doesn't mean you haven't built strength. You are a work in progress, and that's okay." Her chest tightened as she absorbed his words. They resonated, invoking both comfort and frustration. Had she truly gained any lasting strength? Or was she simply on a temporary high, teetering above the abyss of self-doubt? Shaking away the uncertainty, she redirected the conversation. "What about you? I mean, you've been such a guiding force for me. What led you to help others like this?" David's expression transformed, revealing a flicker of introspection. "I've seen too many talented people hold themselves back. I was one of them, not in nursing but in my early career. I missed opportunities because I didn't believe in my worth. So I decided to be a voice for those who need it." As he spoke, Sarah couldn't help but feel the distinct threads of connection weaving between them. David's willingness to share made her reflect on her own narrative. Each revelation of his story was less a dialogue and more an exploration of mutual growth. "What do you think is the most crucial part of this journey?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Ownership," he replied without hesitation. "Taking ownership over your own potential is paramount. You have to recognize the power you hold in every decision, every moment when you choose courage over comfort." Suddenly, the conversation felt less like a safe exchange and more like a high-stakes negotiation with her own inner turmoil. The enormity of that ownership resonated painfully as she recalled the moments when she had shrunk back a child rather than a towering nurse. Could she truly claim this strength? Right now, Sarah began slowly, gathering strength in her voice. "I want to own my path, not just seek approval. I think I need to define what success looks like for me beyond these walls." David smiled, genuinely impressed, but she could see the reflection of concern in his eyes. "That's a pivotal realization. You have many avenues ahead of you. But don't be surprised when the next steps come with challenges that test your resolve." As their conversation continued, the initial excitement was soon overshadowed by a tidal wave of self-inquiry. What would her next steps be? How could she incorporate this newfound perspective while managing the inevitable fears that lurked, poised for a strike? As they wrapped up their meeting, Sarah felt rejuvenated yet daunted by the weight of wisdom she had gleaned. What if I falter again? She mused internally. David's parting words rang in her ears long after she waved goodbye. Remember, every leader faces doubts. The mastery lies in acknowledging them, not letting them define you. What lay ahead was still shrouded in mystery, a horizon filled with daunting possibilities. By the time she returned home, a pressing question took root: would she embrace the unraveling journey of personal ownership or allow herself to be pulled back into the void of uncertainty? That night, as she lay in bed, the echoes of David's advice reverberated, a siren call guiding her next steps. Was she ready to redefine success in a way that resonated fully with her own identity? In a world so eager to box her in, what did it truly mean to be the architect of her life? The dawn promised answers, but what would she choose to confront when it broke? The following morning, Sarah awoke to the pale light filtering through her curtains, illuminating a space still heavy with uncertainty. Despite the warmth of the sun, a chill gripped her resolve. How would she take ownership of her path? She sat up abruptly, gathering thoughts, a subdued storm swirling within. Before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed her notebook, the one she'd adorned with inspiring quotes and ideas, flipping to a blank page, her mind racing. What did success truly mean for her? This was no longer about mere titles or fleeting accolades, it was about redefining her purpose, grounding it in what she truly valued. The pen hovered above the page. What do I want? She wrote, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she scribbled details: an inspiring team, impactful patient interactions, and, importantly, a sense of balance, each word crystallized her vision. Vision and foundation, conviction and clarity. She sensed an emerging identity, a nurse invigorated not just by accomplishment but by genuine connection. But was it real or another construct, fragile enough to crumble under scrutiny? With increasing urgency, Sarah recalled David's advice, urging ownership over her potential. It was time to advance beyond mere reflections and step into action. She decided the first step would be to conduct a team meeting, something more ambitious than before. This would go beyond seeking input; she would invite her colleagues to share their own visions and aspirations. What if they lacked engagement? Would they follow her lead? The initial doubts crept back in, but instead of recoiling, she took a deep breath and embraced them. Each doubt was not a barrier but an invitation to rise above. She spent the next hour drafting an agenda that encouraged open dialogue, engaging strategies, and visual representations of aspirations for their practice. The idea felt palpable, electric even, as she envisioned the meeting turning into a sanctuary for creative thought, a space for all to contribute. But then came the questions that rattled her core. Would they view her intentions as genuine? Would they embrace her newfound leadership or treat her ideas with skepticism? The thought of standing in front of them, vulnerable yet determined, pressed intensely against her chest. After work, she walked through the corridors of the hospital, her mind a swirling vortex of thoughts. Familiar faces passed her, some sending nods of acknowledgement, others lost in their routines. Sarah felt an odd mix of connection and isolation. Here she was, trying to forge a path while others simply flowed with the current. That evening, she faced another internal battle. Who had she become? Was she abandoning the safe confines of expectation for something uncertain and potentially confrontational? The notion of possible failure loomed large, conflicting with her desire for growth. The decision crystallized when, alone in the quiet of her living room, she gathered her notes, reaffirming her ambition. Taking ownership was not simply about recognition, it was about taking the risks and facing the fears that whispered she wasn't enough. The following morning, Sarah strode into the hospital with freshness, her heart pounding a rhythm of hope. The nerves clung to her like a second skin, urging her to retreat, but she met them with fierce resolve. As she approached the meeting room, doubts persisted like shadows, ever present yet dissolving under the light of her determination. The room filled quickly, chatter buzzing around. She took her place at the front, heart racing, palms sweaty yet calm. Here sat a band of diverse talents, people who could contribute to something greater than herself. "Thank you all for being here," she began, words surging forth more powerful than she expected. "We're starting a journey today, a collaboration about our collective visions for this team. I'm excited to hear from each of you." As she spoke, a transformative realization unfurled within her, a wave of ownership coursing through her veins. There, in that moment, she was not just a nurse but a leader, ready to cultivate a garden of ideas and aspirations. As the discussions flowed, teams engaged, ideas blossomed, and the conversation deepened. Yet a gnawing anxiety lingered in the back of her mind, one voice skeptically asking if her efforts would truly make a difference. "Sarah, can we do this every week?" a colleague suggested after her presentation ended, eyes bright with eagerness. The excitement was palpable, and so was the challenge lurking in the background. Just as she began to feel a momentum shift, she caught a glance at a familiar face in the back, someone who had previously questioned her capabilities. Their eyes held unspoken criticism, igniting fresh waves of self-doubt. Had she taken a leap too far? The moment of truth hovered tantalizingly, coaxing her to rise up or recede back. What would she choose when faced with the shadows of skepticism? The stakes had risen, and now, consequences loomed closer than ever. Would she find a way to navigate this tide, or would she allow fear to choke her budding resolve? Sarah felt every eye on her, the weight of scrutiny settling heavily on her shoulders. The vibrant discussions that had ensued began to dim under the gaze of that one familiar critic, a shadow of doubt threading its way through her burgeoning certainty. She caught herself hesitating, ready to retreat into the comforting cocoon of her previous role, but the voice that surfaced within her urged her to stay. "Thank you for your feedback," she said, addressing the critic directly, her voice steady despite the storm within. "It's important for us to challenge each other and be open about what we need. I can assure you, this journey is about all of us, not just my vision." The words resonated in the room, easing some of the tension but sending an electric jolt through her. A moment of silence hung as her colleagues processed her response. Had she really just asserted herself? Amid that uncertainty, there was an awakening and exhilarating recognition of her capacity to lead without losing her authenticity. "Let us brainstorm some ideas together. What do you want from a team like ours?" She pressed on, glancing around at her team members' faces. Their expressions morphed from skepticism to intrigue, as if she had pulled them forward from the shadows into the light of possibility. As several colleagues began to share their thoughts, Sarah felt a palpable pulse of energy in the room. Ideas flowed faster than she could take notes, each contribution adding layers to the framework she envisioned. The discussion had transformed into a lively exchange, pulsating with creativity and mutual respect. The initial criticism was set aside, a point turned into a platform. Later, as the meeting wrapped up, a feeling of accomplishment surged through her. They had not just spoken about aspirations but had woven a narrative of connectivity, a tapestry of shared goals that appeared within grasp. Stepping outside the meeting room, though, the critic's gaze haunted her mind. "Can I have a word?" the colleague called, stepping into her path. The queasiness surged back. They didn't have the best history, this could go either way. "Of course," Sarah replied, maintaining her poise. The two moved to the side, and she braced herself for potential confrontation, ready to counter any cuts of skepticism. "I didn't know you had that in you," came the unexpected admission. "I used to think you floated by on your title, but today you surprised me. Good job." A wave of relief washed over her. "Thank you," she managed, the compliment sparking a warmth within that diffused some of the lingering anxiety. Was it validation she needed or affirmation of her purpose? Perhaps both. "Just don't think it'll be easy," the colleague added, a note of caution lacing their tone. "Some may still question your authority." Acknowledging the truth of those words, Sarah swallowed hard, reminding herself of the fire ignited in the meeting. Her ambition had already begun to make waves, she could no longer view her growth through the lens of others' perceptions. Once home, her adrenaline began to fade, leaving behind a concoction of euphoria and trepidation. She collapsed onto her couch, notebook on her lap, contemplating the day's events. Ownership was not merely about asserting leadership, it was a fusion of vulnerability and resilience. As thoughts churned, a realization anchored deep within her: each moment of hesitation was a stepping stone toward fortitude. She would have to persist through challenges, confront doubts, and navigate the complexities of leadership not just for herself, but for every voice that yearned to be heard. That evening, she decided to draft a weekly agenda for the upcoming meetings, infused with ideas they had generated. Organizing thoughts had always been her forte, but now, it symbolized strategic intent, driving accountability and shared ownership among her colleagues. She was ready to elevate the narrative of their team, yet lingering doubts beckoned. What if the momentum faltered? What if those in the shadows chose to undermine her commitment? Drawing in a breath, she infused her energy into the document, determined to harness their collective power. As she typed away, Sarah's heart raced with excitement. Each keystroke became a declaration: she intended to hold her ground. The clock ticked, time marching forward, a reminder of the challenges ahead. But as her resolve solidified, a new thought emerged: what if taking risks could unearth hidden potential not only in herself but in those around her? The realization then settled in like a question left unanswered: would she have the courage required to confront the obstacles ahead, or would self-doubt regain its hold? Rolling her shoulders back, she prepared for the climb. She was only a few steps in, but the summit looked promising or perilous. The moment of reckoning awaited. The next morning dawned with an unfamiliar brightness. A blend of urgency and possibility imbued the air. Sarah woke earlier than usual, her mind racing to convert a night of restless thought into tangible action. Today's meetings morphed from anticipated obligations into gateways to opportunity, each presenting the promise of shared evolution. Yet, beneath that enthusiasm, a nagging worry wormed its way through her resolve: would her newfound assertiveness withstand scrutiny as demands grew? With a cup of coffee steaming beside her, Sarah dove into her work. She reviewed her agenda one more time, the notes meticulously balancing her vision with the contributions from her colleagues. Each bullet point was a beacon, a call to engage and inspire. She envisioned not just a routine meeting but a collaborative renaissance that would redefine their team's trajectory. As she prepared to leave for the office, Sarah considered the significance of the opportunity presented before her. Her leadership journey was not merely about implementation, it was an invitation to challenge the status quo, to illuminate hidden potentials waiting to surface. Today, she would navigate that very essence, but her confidence flickered as she thought of the critic's caution. Arriving at work, she plummeted into a sea of meetings. Feedback was immediate, a constant oscillation of affirmation and critique. Colleagues reacted with curiosity, presented new ideas, while others hung back, parsing the waters of engagement cautiously. In those moments, Sarah sensed the unseen strings of her influence starting to weave. She was beginning to tailor their interactions, yet still straddled doubt. Was she genuinely transforming their dynamic, or merely leading them into a disparate collection of discussions? At the day's team meeting, she invoked her agenda. The room was tight-lipped, the atmosphere a blend of anticipation and skepticism. Sarah parked these emotions at the door, ready to execute the purpose of this gathering. Today, I want us to think beyond traditional outputs. I want us to envision how we can serve not just our objectives but each other. This statement cracked through the tension. Fingers fidgeted, eyes brightened, and lavender-scented pens scribbled on notepads as energy coursed through the room. Ideas landed like breadcrumbs, each one a potential pathway to greater collaboration. But as the session flourished, a familiar voice drifted forward from the back row, one that set her heartbeat racing: the critic. "Sarah, if we're breaking norms, how do I know you won't revert to just a figurehead when the stakes rise?" A hush enclosed them. Recent victories felt suddenly fragile. Yet confrontation was the mat on which her growth had to unfurl. She remembered her internal resolve, the voice that had labeled doubt as a mere shadow of potential. I appreciate your concern, she replied, her body steady despite the tremor beneath. But that's exactly why we're here. This is a call for all of us to engage. I've decided that if we are going to elevate our work, we need every member fully invested. If I stumble, I need you all to remind me to rise with you. A flicker of surprise danced across the critic's face, uncertainty rippling through the crowd as they hung on her words. The offer of collective accountability satisfied a deeper current, one that yearned for trust even before roles were accepted or validated. As she closed the meeting, pulse racing and adrenaline coursing, the energy held her steady. There was no instant resolution. She was aware of the lingering doubts that could swirl back when faced with challenges. However, a notion bubbled within: here was a growth opportunity, a moment to tether their fates together. Weeks blurred into a series of small victories and setbacks, but as Sarah's plans developed, so too did her confidence. Each meeting transformed into a lesson, each interaction reflecting broader stories she had yet to fully comprehend. Would embracing vulnerability invite deeper understanding, or would it fracture the very connections she'd strive to build? The prospect of an upcoming quarterly review loomed closer, inching ever nearer with each passing day. A particularly frustrating project had recently taken a wrong turn, and Sarah felt the pressure like lead pressing against her chest. She had claimed her space and propelled engagement, yet the fear of inadequacy flared anew. How vulnerable could she allow herself to be? Would the clarity she sought emerge from vulnerability, or had she nudged her colleagues too far? As she gathered her notes and fought back the rising tide of doubt, she could not shake the question that loomed large: how would she respond to failure when it inevitably arrived at her doorstep again? Gritting her teeth, she determined to brace for whatever vote of confidence or disbelief awaited her. A whiff of determination filled the air, but Sarah remained acutely conscious that the path forward was steep and fraught with pitfalls. What awaited her as the quarterly review approached was a revelation she could not yet fathom. Would it pull her further into the depths of uncertainty, or propel her into the heights she never dreamed possible? The day before the quarterly review loomed heavy in Sarah's mind, a smothering shade that threatened to eclipse her recent accomplishments. Her hands trembled as she shuffled through her notes, scrutinizing the metrics and projections she had prepared so meticulously. Each figure felt like a looming judgment, revealing not just the performance of the team but the very essence of her leadership journey. Doubts clawed at her, trying to dismantle the foundation she'd worked so hard to build. In the quiet of her office, Sarah paused to breathe, forcing herself to visualize success. She pictured the room filled with her colleagues, their expressions ranging from anxiety to expectation. She could almost hear the voice of the critic sharp against the silence, probing weaknesses and dissecting her every move. How could she wield vulnerability as a source of strength while contending with the relentless scrutiny she feared? The morning of the review, she woke with an urgency more intense than before. Tonight would be a reflection of her growth, yet it also felt precariously like a precipice. She steeled herself, reviewing her presentation one last time, the digital screen framed with images of their collective achievements. The data sparkled, a testament to the hard work that had gone into their projects. As she stood before her colleagues later that day, the conference room transformed into a crucible. Sarah inhaled deeply, centering herself amid the growing tension. Thank you all for being here. Today is not just about numbers, it's about the choices we've made and how they reflect our commitment to each other, she began, her voice steady, though her heart raced. With each slide, she shared not only accomplishments but also failures, honest, raw admissions that showcased her willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. The team listened, the air taut with anticipation. The moments she would dissect felt like a gamble. Would vulnerability resonate, or would it leave them questioning her capability as their leader? As she shared the missteps of the problematic project, the burden in her chest eased slightly. We encountered setbacks, she said, her tone resolute. But we each committed to persevering and adjusting our approach. It's this adaptability that will define our success moving forward. A flicker of understanding passed among her team. They could see in her willingness to be transparent an invitation for collaboration. The critiques that once loomed felt manageable, softened by shared experiences. But as Sarah moved into the closing summary, presenting the team's strategies going forward, she felt an unexpected jolt. Tension shifted in the room, all eyes fell upon her as the critic raised a hand. "Sarah, you say we should lean into our accountability, but what happens when things get tough? Are you willing to take the reins when failure seems imminent?" His inquiry lingered, a spotlight that left no room for pretense. Would her poise withstand this moment, or would doubt seep back in? "Yes," she answered firmly, grounding herself in the belief that growth stemmed from shared risk. "Failure is part of growth, and I invite us all to own it. But let us ensure we're growing together, not apart. I may falter, but my resolve to lead does not waver. If I stumble, I need you all by my side to help me rise again." The atmosphere shifted palpably, a shared burden of accountability materialized. Colleagues exchanged cautious glances, and Sarah understood then that walls started to crumble. The reviewer was no longer just a target but an invitation to co-create a solution. Once the meeting concluded, the aftermath felt electric. Colleagues approached her with nods of approval and words of encouragement. Yet, amid their support, nagging questions lingered within her. Would this moment of connection translate into sustained support in future challenges? As Sarah emerged from the meeting room, buoyed yet anxious, she overheard chatter. "Did you hear that? I think she might actually get through to him," one colleague murmured enthusiastically. But before she could hold on to that optimistic thought, a message pinged on her phone. A deep-rooted fear resurfaced, an unexpected invoice, drastically larger than anticipated, demanding attention and raising questions about her already strained finances. As the weight bore down on her, she pushed through the uncertainty to piece together her next move. Would she call out for help, a step that felt foreign yet necessary? Or would she plunge into the anxiety alone? As dusk settled, Sarah grappled with the ramifications of her choices, questions tangled with newfound determination. The quarterly review had offered a glimmer of hope, yet an unforeseen challenge loomed at the horizon. How would she confront this financial hurdle and navigate the delicate balance of strength and vulnerability once again? The following morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow through the windows of Sarah's apartment. It felt like an omen of the potential that lay ahead. But as she sat at her kitchen table, the unforgiving figure of the unexpected invoice stared back at her, a stark reminder of her still fragile circumstances. She faced an important choice: would she allow this obstacle to define her, or would she confront it with the resolve she had cultivated in her journey toward strength and ownership? With a deep inhale, Sarah began drafting a budget plan, aligning her immediate needs against her resources. She moved methodically, prioritizing expenses, cutting back on unnecessary luxuries, and even considering part-time opportunities that could bolster her income. Each line item she penned felt like a declaration she was no longer a victim of circumstance but a proactive architect of her financial future. As the days blurred together, she executed her plan with precision, channeling the energy from her recent successes into her financial strategy. Each small achievement, finding deals on groceries, renegotiating bills, even temporarily altering her schedule for extra shifts, built her confidence. She was becoming adept at navigating not only her personal obstacles but also her professional identity as a leader. However, looming in the background was that nagging thought: how would she proceed when the next challenge arrived? This unrelenting fear of inadequacy threatened to undermine the strides she had made. How could she sustain herself amid the unexpected complexities of life while paving a new way for her career? The past few months had been an odyssey of transformation. Had she truly evolved, or were these small victories merely surface-level mirages hiding deeper insecurities? That week, another meeting with David opened up avenues for professional networking. He invited her to a healthcare leaders conference as his guest, a clear acknowledgement of her growth and potential. As she prepared for the event, excitement swirled within her, but it was tinged with apprehension. Would she measure up among seasoned professionals? Could she share her ideas without reverting to self-doubt? On the day of the conference, as she sat in the expansive ballroom amid industry leaders, something shifted inside her. The speakers, advocating change and innovation, echoed her earlier reflections of her leadership meeting. They discussed overcoming adversity, embracing vulnerability, and confronting fears. Each story shared resonated within her, whispering a profound truth into her heart that every leader's path was riddled with challenges. By the time she took the stage for a breakout session, something remarkable had happened. The trembling fear morphed into a mountain of strength. Looking out into the audience, she recognized her own journey mirrored in the faces eager to learn. "I'm here not just as a nurse but as a mother, a woman navigating challenges while trying to create a better life for my children and a meaningful career," she said, setting the tone for a discussion that blossomed beyond the ordinary. As she spoke, clarity flooded her mind. Sarah illustrated her transition, shared her missteps, and invited colleagues to engage in authentic dialogue. The barrier between herself and her audience dissolved, revealing the collaborative energy she had once only dreamed of igniting. With every shared experience, her confidence solidified, her voice unwavering and powerful. When the session ended, perhaps the greatest recognition was not the accolades that followed but the validation of her growth. She could lead with sincerity and strength, inspire others, and evolve throughout the journey. Returning home that night, the weight of the unexpected invoice felt lighter. She could feel the thrill of possibility coursing through her veins. Just before sleep settled in, she recounted her achievements, each one feeling like a stone paving her path forward. She had not only accomplished professional goals but had made strides in her personal battles, asserting her worth while reimagining what success could look like for her life and career. In the weeks that followed, Sarah intentionally reached out within her professional circle, forging new connections. She discovered mentorship opportunities, invested in leadership courses, and began developing workshops targeted at empowering others like herself, a solidified commitment to not just personal achievement but uplifting those around her. The unexpected financial hurdle? It transformed into an opportunity to create transparency with her trusted colleagues. By sharing her financial struggles, she fostered a bond that led to resource sharing, creating a network that extended beyond mere professional affiliation. The unity they built overshadowed any lingering insecurities, strengthening both her resolve and her connection with her peers. Reflecting upon her journey, Sarah knew she had not only conquered external obstacles but, more importantly, had confronted the inner voice that sought to silence her potential. The proud realization dawned upon her: she was no longer defined by the challenges she faced but by how she chose to respond. It was this sense of agency that would guide her journey moving forward. With every success, an ebbing wave of gratitude washed over her. The transformative evolution she had undergone burgeoned into a thriving reality. Sarah recognized that true strength lay not in perfection, but in the willingness to embrace the ambiguity of life while forging ahead with unwavering conviction. As she watched Emma and Leo play in the living room, laughter bubbling through the air, she felt a sense of peace settle within her. They were the why behind her resilience, the promise of a life lived with intention. The knots of fear and uncertainty had not disappeared but had transformed into the fuel that propelled her forward, encouraging her to take risks and embrace the unknown. Consciously, she embraced her paradigm shift. She had emerged not just as a single mother balancing challenges but as a beacon of empowerment, a leader ready to inspire others, equipped with the compassion and strength to navigate a path uniquely her own. And as she laid her head down that night, the air was suffused with a textural richness of accomplishment, gratitude blooming like the dawn. She whispered softly into the stillness, "I am enough." What will your journey be like? Discover your own potential today, take that leap into the unknown, and redefine what it means to flourish against all odds. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the journey of transformation you just witnessed. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters. It's time to take action.